Welcome to a new show here on our Kings of the North YouTube and podcast network. It is Bets of the North. Everything's of the North. He's T-Shoe of the North. I'm Doug of the North. This is Bets of the North. It is our new official Friday morning college football betting show that you will find on this feed every Friday morning from now until when there aren't any more college football games this season. You know me, I'm Doug. And you might know him, but if you don't, get ready. You're going to make a new friend. It is Tyler Shoemaker. He is, well, he's just a swell fella, but he is somebody who has created his own system for evaluating college football teams. He also has done it for WNBA teams. He does it for everybody. But we are going to talk with Tyler through the season about college football betting. And this first show is to just say hello and let everybody get to know T-Shoe, but also to lay some groundwork about how you should think about betting. But first of all, T-Shoe, we did it. I can't believe it. It's so good.
We did it. We are officially back. If you don't know, Doug and I did a show similar to this a couple of years ago. Got great responses from it. Had a great time doing it. So as soon as that season ended, we said, like, all right, at some point, we got to do this again in some capacity. And we made it happen. So here we are.
So this isn't just some guy. He's an official Kings of the North contributor. He's on the team, man. He's on the team. But T-Shoe, they also can find your work. You do some stuff for VSiN, right? Just so people know, like, just tell us your deal, what else you do, and like why anybody should be like, I don't know, there's this Shoemaker fella who knows about betting. Like, why should anyone listen to you? Well, they know not to listen to me. Why should they listen to you?
I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. I've been doing this a long time. I've spent a lot of time researching, studying the markets, putting together these numbers, evolving my system. But yeah, you can find me at vsin.com. I write 4 articles a week there. So throughout college football season, and especially the first month while WNBA is going on, I'll have WNBA best bet articles. I'll have college football stuff. I'll have NFL stuff. I pretty much do it all. I have a winning track record betting long term, which I always document. Every bet that I give out, 1, I personally make, and 2, I document. And so I'm fully transparent, win or lose. So you know what you're going to get with me, and it's going to be a fun season. I can't wait, and hopefully we can cash some bets along the way.
And you also know what you're going to get with me, because I do not make every bet I suggest on my show, and I do not stand behind anything. So this is kind of one of those. It's kind of a thing that people do. It's like, hey, it's the smart guy, the chucklehead. Like you've seen this before. That's what this is. Also, one of us has a fresh new sunburn and one does not, because one of us stood at Cincinnati practice in the sun for 2 hours with the whitest skin in America and no sunblock, and somebody else is aware of their surroundings and would protect themselves against the sun should they choose to stand outside for 2 hours. Do you wear sunblock when you go outside, T-Shoe?
Oh, 100%. I was going to say, now I'm the whitest guy in America, because now you're just red. So now I'm the whitest guy in America for sure.
I'm still very white on the inside. I am what am I going to do? But I am fire engine red on the outside for this show. So what we want to do here, because this is a thing that happens when we get into the season, we're going to make best bets. We're going to have like the Northern upset of the week. T-Shoe's just going to give you good stuff that he feels like there are edges to find. So, we'll do some preseason win totals and that kind of thing. But we want to lay the groundwork first, sort of how people, and here's the thing. You might be a gambling expert and enjoy this show. You might be. Great. T-Shoe's going to give you a chance to find another little bit of an edge. You might dislike gambling and enjoy this show, because T-Shoe's just kind of an interesting guy. And when you talk about this stuff, it does allow you to analyze football, even if you have no intention of betting on it. Or if you're like me and you're a $2 bettor and you just are looking to find a little bit of help somewhere, this is an excellent way to do it. To have T-Shoe come into your life and talk about it. So I just think this stuff is interesting anyway. But one of my big things, Tyler, is having a handle on how you think a game might go, but then having no idea to how to bet it to maximize your opportunity to win. So there's a couple little like ins and outs that I want to talk about. And number one is this. If there's a team that you like in the preseason, at this part in the calendar, are preseason win totals a good thing to maybe like I'm $2 Doug. I could become $10 preseason win total Doug because I feel like it's a 4-month bet. So I'm getting like 4 cents of value every day of the college football season thinking about my long-term bet. If you like a team, if you really believe in something, is that a good way to go about it? Or are you better off just trying to bet on that team multiple times during the year? What's the better strategy? Are they both good strategies?
Yeah, I think they're both good strategies. That is a really interesting, complex question. I do think they both can work, right? Now, in terms of like calculating the edge, it's going to be the exact same formula. You're just looking for an implied probability. You do the math, you figure out where the edge is. So from that standpoint, going to be the exact same. The one thing with a season-long win total is there's going to be less variance because you're talking about a bigger sample size. Whereas, with one game, that it can go any number of ways, right? But a season for a team, assuming they stay healthy, you're getting a much bigger sample. You probably know a little bit more of what you're going to get. Now, the downside, though, you are tying up, that unit size for the year, so you got to be okay with that. And a key injury early in the season, especially if you're betting an over, can really kill you. Now, you can say, well, an injury can hurt you in a week-to-week bet, which I agree with. However, I think it's easier for a team to patch together something for a week, or even within a game than it is like, okay, our best quarterback just got hurt in preseason camp. Now what are we going to, we have no one behind him. Like, Ohio State 2019, if Justin Fields would have gotten hurt in preseason camp, what would they have done? They had won 5 games with Chris Jugganoff. So those are the things you have to take into consideration. I think generally speaking, this actually hasn't been the case for me so far this offseason. Generally speaking, I would prefer to be on some unders because as we've talked about before, I think there's more that can go wrong than can go right. However, again, this season, we've talked about on my last appearance on the show, we talked about Missouri, Notre Dame as teams that I like. They're over. I've already bet those overs. I have not gotten to the window on any actual unders yet. So stay tuned for that. We'll probably have that here in an upcoming show. But yeah, to answer your question, they're both good. I don't think you should say I'm only going to bet win totals or I'm only going to bet week to week. I think there's a healthy mixture there.
It's one of those things, unders versus overs. No teams ever unexpectedly add talent during the season. Maybe guys rise up, but even with the transfer portal, you're not going to be like, oh, hey, did you hear Dylan Gabriel transferred to Minnesota for week 3? Oh man, but guys get hurt. So that is a smart thing. My general view on stuff like this is I'll usually maybe try to find, I try to do an odd number, like maybe 7 or 9 win totals that I like and hope I can go 6-3 on my preseason win totals. Maybe try to go 5-2 on my preseason win totals, get a little something going, but account for the fact that maybe one of them or two of them is going to be blown up by an injury or something like that. Is that a good strategy? Or you're like, yeah, Doug, you got it. Nailed it.
Doug, if you're going 5-2, then you need to be the gambling expert on the show, and I need to be the average Joe. So yeah, if you go 5-2, I think no matter what your thought process was, I think that's probably a good strategy. Going 5-2 would highly recommend 5 stars.
Boom. All right. So I'll be giving you guys mine coming up. And what one of them is? What one of them's going to be? I said we don't have to say names of teams on this show yet because it's generic. Rutgers.
I knew it.
Boom. See, we're good. Oh, I forgot to put it on. I was literally racing from Cincinnati's practice. My T-shoe Rice hoodie is hanging in my closet. I was going to put it on for this show. I'll wear it for the next show. Tyler and I, you got to find edges, and that leads us into our next topic. You got to find edges wherever they may be. You cannot turn up your nose at an edge. And on our previous show, we, for some period of time, fell in love with Rice football. And T-Shoe, because he is the most generous man in America, for Christmas, got me a Rice hoodie with my name on the back. So I will wear it on the next show. If I wasn't running in with my face on fire, I would have put it on before the show. Because I was driving through the hills of Ohio thinking I got to put on my Rice thing, and I forgot to do it. Smaller schools, though, are there, maybe people say, oh, cool, I'm tuned into a show to tell me to bet on Rice. It's like, well, do you want to win money? Do you want to win money? Right? Are there inherent advantages to betting on smaller or quote less popular schools?
I think so. And I think this is probably the dividing line between like people that really want to win money and people that just like want to have some action on the big game that they're going to watch, the Georgia Clemson week 1 game. Like everyone's going to watch that. There are going to be people that bet on that just because they know they're going to watch it. But yeah, these small schools, I would say the majority of my best bets are going to come from non-Power 4 conferences. That's just how it goes, because there's a couple of reasons for that. One, books are going to see less total action on those games. Akron versus Kent State, not sexy at all, but we might be able to find a mathematical edge there, based on my projections and the fact that the lines are going to be softer because there's not going to be a ton of people betting those, hammering that line to where it should be. So, and when there's less national attention, there's just less information about it. So bettors don't, know what to make of those teams, which again, for someone like me that has numbers on every team in America, can give us a huge advantage. So that's the reason oftentimes we will be on those smaller schools. And yeah, Rice was a cash cow for us 2 years ago. Last year, Bowling Green kind of became my team. We bet Bowling Green almost every week, bet them in the bowl game. I mean, when they upset Georgia Tech last year, we had them plus the points. I mean, that's just how it goes. You find edges on these smaller schools and you can kind of ride those most of the season, I think.
Let me suggest this for anybody who's watching this and thinking, I also think gambling is a wonderful gift. So if you have a birthday coming up, if you have maybe a Labor Day gift that you're going to ask your friends or family for, what do you get me for Labor Day? Ask for money in your account on your betting app, or give it to yourself. You got to, right? That's self-care. Giving yourself
100%.
money to lose on betting is a form of self-care. So give yourself maybe $50. Just don't go to Chipotle for like 4 times. Actually, probably don't go to Chipotle twice. Give yourself $50, but then maybe have 2 buckets. Have the $2, I'm going to watch this game, so I want to throw money on it to make it a little more interesting because I'm going to watch West Virginia, Penn State, or Georgia Clemson anyway. But then have another bucket for the T-Shoe told me to bet on this game that I could not name a single player on that team, because that's where you might actually win. So I know it might be tempting when you watch this show to ignore T-Shoe when he's telling you to bet on a team that you've never heard of. That's where the edges are going to be, though. So 2 buckets, everybody. Is that okay? Two buckets, the fun bucket and the money bucket.
100%. And sometimes those buckets are going to cross over. I threw out the Georgia Clemson game as an example, but I already have a best bet on that game. So, sometimes, especially if you can bet those numbers early, which I did, I put in bets in June. So when you can bet early, sometimes you can get edges on those more marquee games. Now, if it's a Saturday night game and you're betting at 4 p.m. on Saturday, you're probably not going to have a huge edge there in most cases. Okay.
Let's talk about when you get in season betting totals versus betting the spread, right? So you're betting the over under, I think 52.5 points. It'll be more than that or fewer points than that will be scored versus I'm taking this team minus 7.5. I'm taking this team plus 7.5. Is there anything inherent strategically to any of that? Or is it just finding an edge regardless of whether it's a total or a point spread?
Yeah, I think in terms of the math, it's going to be, again, the same, kind of like we talked about with the win totals versus weekly betting. The math is going to be the same. However, there is going to be more variance with a total. The standard deviation for a college football total is about 17 points. The standard deviation for a college football spread is about 13 points. So totals are a little more, could swing, a missed field goal, an interception, at the goal line, something like that really swings things. Whereas point spreads are a little more tight as far as how the results go, because they're much smaller numbers. Obviously, a 7-point spread, obviously much smaller than a 56-point total. So it makes sense. Now, for instance, like with my WNBA betting, I found myself on more totals this season than I have spreads. Been very successful with that, but I didn't set out to do that. That was just kind of how my projections and the market worked out, right? So we do kind of what the projections versus the market dictates. So we're going to bet some totals. We're going to bet some spreads. But it's not a conscious, like, I'm going to focus on totals, or I'm going to focus on spreads. I do think there are successful handicappers that say, I can't process both of these. I'm just going to focus on one or the other. And you can have success doing that. I don't think there's a right or wrong. But as far as getting everyone prepared for what they can expect from us this season, we're going to be on both, because my numbers project both. We're going to find edges on both.
I sometimes like totals because I feel like you can read a game completely wrong and still win on a total bet, where if you read the game completely wrong on a point spread, you're just going to be wrong. Like, I thought this team that was a 7-point underdog was a great bet and they lost by 40. But in that same game, you could think the game is going to go over because you think both teams will score at least 3 touchdowns. So a total of 45.5, like, you feel really good about, because I think it's going to be like, 30-27. I really feel good about the over, and you're completely wrong. And somebody wins 55-0 and you're still over, right? For someone like me who has made a career of being wrong, I like the tiny extra window of being wrong and still winning the bet. Yes.
And as I pointed out before, I think you do an excellent job of identifying what a game script might be. And I think that lends itself more to, like you said, you can be wrong about, which team is better or what that margin might be, but kind of be in the right general direction as far as like a tempo and a total. So I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense based on my having known you for so long and knowing kind of your thought process as you bet. I think that makes a lot of sense.
And the only reason I think it's worth bringing this up for casual bettors is because I think a casual bettor's instinct is point spread. Oh, the point spread's 3.5. Oh, I'll take that team plus 3.5. I think at least have totals in your mind a little bit and look for opportunities there where something, whether it's T-Shoes numbers or just something in your heart or your soul or your brain or in your house, your wife or your kids, your husband is telling you, be open to totals so that you're not only betting point spreads. That's kind of where I think your head should at least be. All right. The next thing, this is very specific, and I actually have a little scooch bit of research here. It's about player props and betting on individual players. And depending where you are watching this or listening to this, first of all, in some states, you can't do any of it unless you have a bookie, because it's not legal everywhere yet. But many of the states where sports betting is now legal and you can have 7 apps on your phone. I'm not saying there's somebody on the show who has 7 betting apps on their phone. There could be. I'm not saying who it would be. I'm not saying it would be you. I'm not saying it would be me. Just like Jim Harbaugh, though, I'm not turning over my phone. Granted, I'm not giving up my phone. Mostly it's because, like, I don't want anyone to see like my Taco Bell orders and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care what else they see. No props in college games in multiple states. So this is like, for instance, I'm in Ohio. Ohio last year you could do it, but then they changed it. Like, they outlawed it, I think, like for the 2024 year. So it was like you got to like the bowl games, and it was like you can't bet on player props anymore. For instance, Dylan Gabriel over under 260.5 passing yards in a game. That is, again, within, maybe you have a feel for how you think a player is going to play, but you don't know how everything else is going to happen. So you like a player bet more than a team bet. Running through it quick. Arizona can't do it. Colorado can't do it. Kentucky and Illinois can't do it on teams that play in the state, right? So if you're in Illinois, you can bet on Oregon, but you can't bet on Illinois or Northwestern. Same in Iowa. You can't bet on them in the state. Indiana, you can bet them, but only before the game, not during the game. Kansas, you're good. Louisiana, no. Maryland, no. Massachusetts, no. Michigan, you're good. New Jersey, can't bet on New Jersey teams. Ohio, no. Oregon, no. New Hampshire, can't bet on New Hampshire teams. New York, no. North Carolina, you're okay. Pennsylvania, no. Tennessee, no. Vermont, no. Virginia, no. DC, okay. West Virginia, no. Wyoming, okay. What do you think about that law, first of all? State legislatures that are saying we are allowing sports betting, but in particular for athletes that still in many ways are deemed amateurs. We're not going to let people, A, make money off an amateur's individual performance, and B, bug them about it. Hey, I bet on you to rush for more than 27 yards and you only had 24. That, I think, is the main thing. What do you think of not allowing it?
Yeah, I think that is the main thing. What I'm most surprised at is are the states that, like you said, had it legal and then reversed that and now you can't. I think to me that's very weird. I kind of thought when certain states legalized gambling, but they said from the outset you're not going to be able to bet player props. I was like, okay, they're kind of just prolonging the inevitable. They're eventually going to get around to it. But now we're seeing states go the other way with it, and I mean, I don't know. It just seems very arbitrary to me because again, the pro athletes, obviously you can bet player props, and now that college athletes can get paid, I don't know. It doesn't, it's inconsistent to me. The logic is inconsistent. So I don't have a strong opinion as far as like, I personally am not really affected because I don't do a ton of college player props anyway. So it's all the same to me, but from just a general principle standpoint, it's very inconsistent to me.
It feels like an anecdotal thing and a bit of a half measure to allow people to feel better about the fact that everybody loves to gamble. So I get it. I'm certainly not going to rail against it. I think maybe 4 years from now, everybody will be like, you know what? Okay. Especially the more and more and more that college sports gets professionalized. I mean, just as a journalist, I think of it differently, right? Rip millionaires. I've been ripping millionaires since I was 24, man. When I was covering high school sports, it's like, okay. And then I started covering Major League Baseball when I was 24. I was like, I am here to rip millionaires. That's not how I thought about covering college sports. Now, many of them, or at least some of them, are millionaires. It doesn't mean I'm going to instantaneously be like, all right, let's find some 19-year-olds to rip. That's not how I'm going to go about my business. But it's gonna at least slightly affect my view. It probably in the end is more about their age and that they're young people and they're not fully formed adults. I am a fully formed adult, kind of. So why am I in the business of ripping college kids? But I, at times in my sports journalism career, have thought to myself, go cry on your pile of money. You'll be fine. So I kind of get why we're not doing it. But let's talk about, even if you are in a place where you can do it, and it really is kind of a half measure of like, hey, you're in Illinois, you can bet on Dylan Gabriel and yell at him on Twitter, but you can't bet on anybody at Northwestern Illinois and bet on them on Twitter because, like, are you going to drive to their dorm and yell at them and you can't drive to Dylan Gabriel's dorm? Is that what they think the difference is? But I get it. I do get it. What do you think of this betting in general? Because I do think it can be very easy of like, oh, I don't know how this game is going to go, but I know this guy's going to have more than 12 and a half receiving yards. Are those good bets or no?
Sure. And honestly, in a lot of cases, you're probably going to have the softest lines available on any market for any given game. That being said, you're going to have lower limits. But I think the difficult thing is they're much harder to actually project from, like, you know, a math standpoint, like I do with my numbers for sides and totals. I should just go ahead and get this out of the way now. My worst bet of all time, hands down, 2020 Big Ten Championship, Trey Sermon's rushing over under was like 60.5, and I bet it under. And he proceeded to break Eddie George's single game Ohio State record of 300 and some yards. So, you know, player props, not for everybody. That was probably about the time I said, all right, I should probably just stick to sides and totals.
I feel like there should be something in the fine print that says, if you bet $5 on an under and it goes over by more than 6 times the number, we're going to take extra money from you. Like, I know you only bet 5, but we're taking $20 out of your account. I don't know what to tell you. You're so wrong. You have to pay the so wrong fee. But that's because there is less math in that. Isn't individual player props? It's all vibes, isn't it? It's all vibes, or can you really get into math on that?
So that's where I personally defer. Daily fantasy sites like Roto Grinders and Roto Wire and places like that, they will do daily fantasy projections that you can look at and apply towards betting player props. So I think there is information out there, free information out there that can help you kind of use numbers a little bit. So, like with anything, I don't want you to take my numbers as gospel. Don't take anybody else's numbers as gospel. But if you have a feeling, hey, I like whoever Dylan Gabriel's passing total over, let me look and see what some of these sites that are pretty good at projecting say. And then that's how you can kind of come up with your bet. That can kind of be your handicapping process for player props.
Do you know this? Maybe nobody knows. Maybe it's like the Wizard of Oz and they're behind the curtain. Is there a robot algorithm making like individual player prop lines? Okay, Colston Loveland against Fresno State. 51.5 receiving yards over or under. We'll go look at that when the season starts and see how close I was. Is there a computer robot doing that? Or is there somebody in a building with their head in their hands going, okay, he had 47 yards in week 6 last year. He had 78 yards, and trying to find that number. How do they get, like, I get how you get the point spreads kind of, and you react to the market in a lot of ways. The individual player numbers, especially when they come out, where do they come from?
Yeah, so I know generally where they come from, and it is more of a robot algorithm. I just personally have not had the time to like really sit down and try to hash it out. But the gist of it is basically
built a robot in your house.
Not yet, not for this anyway. So I think it's basically like the general concept would be like, okay, Colston Loveland averages this many receiving yards. The team they play gives up on average this many receiving yards, which is a whatever percentage. Like that's basically where it comes from. There is a rhyme and reason to it. I don't think it's just a guy like, he had 37 last week, we'll set it at 36.5 this week. I don't think it's that. I think there is an algorithm to it. I just personally have not had the time to like really sit down and craft one out for myself.
Yeah. I mean, if you ever do build a robot, maybe have it do something else besides that. I don't know.
Maybe more useful things. I don't know.
Make coffee for you in the morning. Thanks, robot. Hey, robot, what's the Donovan Edwards over under rushing total? And yes, I would like cream in my coffee. All right. Parlays, teasers, and buying points. This is what I like to call fancy betting. Sometimes when I hear people talk about gambling stuff, like the people who kind of do it, parlays are for dummies. Is that like, should you be dancing on this dance floor? Anybody? Is this a thing that you can do to actually try to win? Or is it just fun to think I'm going to go 4 for 4 on my picks? And so I'm going to try to win 17 times my money, because even though I've literally never gotten 4 straight games right in my life, it's going to happen now. And if I go 3-1, I get nothing. That's what a parlay is. Teasers are a little more complicated. Buying points are more complicated. Should anyone do any of this?
So I don't want to be like just the absolute biggest party pooper. I inevitably every college football season, I end up with people in my DMs like, God, you're so depressing. I was going to bet this parlay, and then I heard you talk about them, and now I just feel like an idiot. But I also understand, like, betting should be fun. So I do encourage you to have fun with it and not just like let it stress you out where you're like up on a Friday night sweating Washington State and San Jose State, like crying. Have some fun with it. Yeah. So if you want to put a couple of dollars on a long shot parlay, like, go for it. But that, in my opinion, that should not be one. I wouldn't put a full unit on it. So if your regular unit is $5, don't put $5 on it. Maybe you put $1 on it. Because the math, like when you actually do the math, like you're really getting screwed by the book on the parlay odds versus if you just bet those plays single straight bets, which is what I do 99% of the time. Now, the other thing is there are opportunities with parlays in particular where, again, using projections like mine or whichever projection source you trust on like a 2-teamer, you actually can find some value. Like last year, for example, I had bet like a Kansas State and somebody money line because my number said there was a huge edge on both money lines. And even when I put them together with the parlay odds I was getting, my math still said there's an edge here. So I played it. So there are edges to be had in parlays.
Did you win that parlay?
I know that was the Missouri 62-yard SEC record field goal to beat Kansas State at the last second, blew that one. But like, of course it did. But
betting. Oh, cancel.
Yeah, I'm like standing in my living room and they're like, and it's the SEC record. And I'm like, of course it is. But as far as parlays, to put a bow on that, no more than 2 teams. Like, if you go any more than 2 teams, there's no way you're going to have an edge. I don't think. I mean, I'd maybe never say never, but 99.9% of the time, you're not going to have an edge. Teasers, I'll just real quick on this. Don't tease college football. There's the standard deviation is too high with the scores in college football. Don't do it. I don't care what the number is. Don't tease college football. That's like, ask any professional handicapper. They'll tell you the same thing. Don't tease college football. Your thoughts?
So teasers make more sense in the NFL where the parity is assumed. So a teaser is, say that you want to make bets on 3 games that, let's say they're all 3-point favorites, right? But you want some more assurance of really feeling like you want to win. You could play a 10-point teaser where you turn all the 3-point favorites, instead of being -3, you play a 10-point teaser and all those teams become +7. So now your teams don't even have to win the game. You're getting like favored teams with as underdogs. But then instead of the odds being like 50-50, now all of a sudden your vig is like -450 or something, right? For each individual game. So it's that you're giving yourself the same amount of points for every game to increase your chances of winning, but you win far less. And in the NFL, I think when everything's so tight, it can be a little reassuring to do it. College football's nuts, which is what you just said.
Yeah. No, NFL, completely different conversation. The NFL, 2-team teasers, absolutely. This is an NFL show, but quickly, if you are going to tease NFL, 2 teams and only through 3 and 7. That's it. That's literally the
to get
teaser
to a number, right?
Yes.
You always are about getting
teaser,
to a number.
Yep. And never through 0. So don't bet, like the example you just gave. Don't bet a favorite to be an underdog. You don't want to tease through 0. But if they're, so say like the Browns are +2.5 and the Bengals are +1.5, you can do a 6-point teaser and get them both +7 or better. Do that. Those are the opportunities. But that, again, NFL, different conversation. But yes, don't tease college football. NFL, keep it to 2 teams.
And then buying points is a similar conversation, right? Because is it about getting to a number, but you don't have to do multiple games. You can do it for a single game. So do you like buying points in college? Maybe.
So I wrote an article. I would encourage you, if you're interested in buying points and like understanding when you should or shouldn't. I put an article out last season on vsin.com. I will do it again this season because I think it's that important, where I actually included a chart of, this is the point spread, this is the implied probability, like this is when you should or shouldn't do it. Like, it's your cheat sheet to when you should and shouldn't buy points. But the gist of that article was, don't only buy points on or off of key numbers. So like if you like Oregon, and they're -7.5, the math said if your book will give you a 0.5 point for 10 cents. So what that means is if the standard odds are Oregon -7.5 at -110 odds, and you can get to -7 at -120 odds, or 6.5 at -130. So again, we're going 10 cents at a time here. Go to 6.5 at -130. That's a better implied probability than the 7.5 at -110. So that's the gist of it. It's hard to explain in audio form, but if you read the article, I'll also tweet out the chart because it's super helpful to see the visual of the numbers of when to do it. But again, the bottom line, I won't say never do it. There are people that say never do it, but I've done the math. There are opportunities where you can do it, but the problem is a lot of books will overcharge you. So if you're going, so in that example, if you're trying to go from Oregon -7.5 to Oregon -6.5, but they're going to charge you -150 for that, now it doesn't make sense. It's all about the price and the math. So again, I'll tweet that out. Go find that article on vsin.com, but it is really interesting and really important for your long-term success at betting.
Because that's one of those things where if you can get on the other side of a key number, it can just make you feel better. But if you're throwing away your edge to do it,
Yep.
then just hope that Oregon kicks a late field goal to win by 10, instead of 7, so that you win at 7.5 rather than paying all that extra juice to get to 6.5. So the one thing, because part of this is, again, the most frustrating thing is being right on the thought and wrong on the bet.
Yep.
And so it can be but I think you can be wrong even while you win, right? So if you do it wrong, you could be correct about Oregon, but be a little nervous, want to make yourself feel better, buy the point to get from 7.5 to 6.5, and then they win by 20, and you win but you win so much less money. And if you've really paid too much juice, you're harming your bankroll to make yourself feel better.
Yep. And again, like at the right price, like I outlined, it's not only like, it makes you feel better, but it also is the right mathematical play. It makes more sense to get -6.5 at -130 than it does to bet -7.5 at -110 odds. Like it makes more sense, and you'll feel better about it going in. So it's like a win-win.
And this is why Tishu is here. I'm all about feelings. And gambling, if you're not an expert, is usually about feelings. But all we would suggest, you said, have fun, but maybe add 20% math to your feelings. Take a little bit of this stuff into account, and then you'll be slightly better at it, and then you'll have different feelings. Because you know what's a bad feeling? Gambling and losing. Oh, I lose $2 at a time, so it's okay. But just like, we're not asking you to change. Pay attention and give yourself the best opportunity to make money when you're right. We all get stuff wrong. Well, I was completely wrong on that game. But don't throw away bets, which is parlays, teasers, and some of this stuff. Don't harm yourself trying to make yourself feel better and win less than you should have. And just listen to the math. And every now and then, bet on a team you've never heard of when Tishu tells you to do it because of the Tishu Index. Let's explain what this is, where this comes from, how you built it. And this is the proprietary information that makes you more than just a husband, more than just a father, more than just a dunking expert, more than just someone who once crossed over Dabo Sweeney in a pickup basketball game. This is what makes you part man, part machine. I'm asking you to build a robot. Tishu, your brain is already partially a robot because you've created the Tishu Index. What is it?
Yeah, so bottom line, it's a tempo and opponent adjusted rating system, because I wanted to answer the basic question: how many points would Team A be expected to score and allow against Team B? If you consume a lot of content, surrounding college football or just sports in general, there are a lot of advanced stats. Everything's analytics now, and which is great. But I also know that as a casual fan, that can get really overwhelming when you're listening to a show and they're just hitting you with, well, this team's EPA and this team's success rate, and you're like, okay, well, that's great. I don't really know how to compute those numbers in my head to like what that's going to look like on the field. So that's what I do. That's what the TSI is. It takes those components and spits it out nice and easy and digestible in an offensive rating and a defensive rating and a power rating for every team. I project a spread and a total for every single game of the season. And again, not only is it important for me to be right, but I also think it's really important for me to be able to explain and for our consumers to be able to digest what I'm saying, because it's great to be right. It's great to have all this stuff, but it doesn't mean a whole lot if no one understands what you're saying. So we want to make it really digestible for the audience.
Okay. And the best bets and that kind of thing come in when your numbers are sort of maybe the most different from Vegas numbers, that your numbers are telling you this team is 11 points better than the team they're playing, and the Vegas line is 7.5. That's right. That's what, when we talk about what you're going to be suggesting people play, it's going to be things like that, right?
Yeah, that's always the starting point. It's like, okay, where do I have the biggest discrepancy, the biggest edge? The kind of the next step in that handicapping process would be, okay, maybe this one game has a little bit bigger of a discrepancy, but this other game I can get a key number. So say there's a discrepancy of 4 points from the spread on one game and only 3 points on another, but on the game with the 3-point edge, I can get a key number. Those are going to be more best bets. Like we talked about the Oregon -7.5 thing. I'm likely not going to bet them -7.5. Say my number is -9.5. I'm probably not going to bet that because the difference between 7.5 and 9.5 in college football is really not all that much. But if I can bet them -7.5 or another team that I like -6.5, and I project -8.5, it's still a 2-point difference, but I'm getting under that key number of 7.
Yep.
So those are the things that we want to teach you to look at and understand when you're making bets. It's not just about feelings or the biggest discrepancy, but taking kind of all that stuff into account and betting smart, with key numbers and understanding the math behind it.
The alternate name for the show, other than Bets of the North, was Feelings and Robots. So I'm still going to do feelings. I just think Rutgers is going to be good. And you're like, the numbers are saying Rutgers will win 4.6 games this year. And I'm like, but I told Greg Schiotto they were going to go 7-2 in the Big Ten. I can't go back on that. So instead, we landed on Bets of the North. And we hope you guys join us every Friday. That will give Tyler, a good amount of time all week. So we're trying to avoid late injuries or crazy weather or something. We want to give you the information as late in the week as possible. On Kings of the North, we're going to be doing a live show Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at noon. T-Shoe may sprinkle in there at times, but then that Friday hit, our only Friday hit, is going to be a recorded show that hits you early Friday morning. So set your alarm for like 5 a.m. Eastern. Don't disturb your spouse and wake up and make bets. No, you can wait, or you don't have to do it at 5 a.m. But I mean, that's when the information will probably be there. So that's what we want to do. And again, just to remind people, you're very public with your bets, but even somebody as smart as you who has built an army of robots, it's not like you're winning 93%, right? You're still trying to get over 50% and enough over 50% to make up for the vig you get that the folks take from you. So what are we talking about here, even with someone who really knows what they're doing?
Yeah. So if you bet standard -110 odds on every bet, you have to go 52.4% just to break even. That's your break even point. The best of the best will hit between 55 and 60% long term. 55 to 60% long term. So we may have weeks or even seasons where you go 63% and it's like, wow, that was awesome. But eventually that's probably going to regress and you're going to have a 47%. So it's about the long term. But again, I've been doing this. This will be my 7th year really, really betting. I'm a long-term winner. I'm at about 57% on college football since 2017. So again, all documented. So so just keep that in mind though. That's a great point to end this with. 55% is the number you should have in your head. That's the gold standard. The best of the best are going to do that. So don't freak out if we go 52% or even 48%, one Saturday. It's going to happen. I'm telling you right now, there's going to be a Saturday where we go 1-4. That's just how it goes. But we're also going to have some 4-1 weeks. And in the long term, if you stick with us, we'll make some money.
Also, I'm at 11%. Lifetime, 11% correct. So one of the other things you can do is just fade Doug. You can either listen to Tyler's robots or just do the opposite of whatever I say. So, although I will say, and it is maybe the most amazing betting thing. Of course, I didn't actually bet it, and I wouldn't bet it, but both Bill Landis and I predicted the Georgia-Ohio State semifinal 2 seasons ago, independent of each other, not working together. We both predicted Georgia 42, Ohio State 41, and hit a noser. Same score in a playoff game.
I think you guys just ripped off TSI because I projected. I went on Buckeye Talk that week and projected Georgia -1, and so we'll take a victory lap on that. I'm just kidding. That was all totally independent of each other. So the three of us, 3 for 3. You guys got the score. I got the spread right. We'll take it.
That's the commercial. We're just putting that on the commercial. You don't put the losses. The losses exist. You don't put the losses on the commercial. So that's Bets of the North. That's what we're going to do. We're not going to ignore the South because we're here to try to help you make money, but we're also going to lean a little bit north at times, right? So like if you have, we'll try to, I think like when we did our previous show, like trying to find an upset, like because people like upsets. Let me bet on an underdog, maybe on the money line to actually win the game. That can be fun. We might have a northern upset pick of the week if you really want to do something like that. We'll have a best bet, but then Tishu's just going to be bringing you like, whatever 3, 4, 5 games that he likes, and it might be, and it not only might be, it will be at times.
It's going to be
versus
Kennesaw
South
State.
Alabama,
Yeah.
and I'll be like, cool. But if it makes money, who's complaining? So put that in one cup, and then in the other cup will be like, this is why I like the Wisconsin money line against Alabama, because the South can cram it, because a robot could say that too. Okay, that's Bets of the North. We are so excited to have Tyler as part of what we're doing here on Kings of the North, and we're just as excited to have you guys along for the ride every Friday morning. Thanks to our producer, Mike Urostowski. He's Tishu. I'm Doug, and that was Bets of the North.